Obviously, this is the launch party for Cloning Freedom, so tell us about the book.
Well, the
The
simplest thing
simplest
is
thing is
just
just
read the
read
back
the
cover
back cover
blurb.
blurb.
And
And
that would be
that
the
would be the
simplest
simplest
thing
thing
if I
if
knew
I
where
knew
my
where my
glasses were.
Not the ones you're wearing. So we,
Oh,
we can do we
I forgot,
hang
I forgot
on.
I had them all.
We can do the Star Wars thing. Wait, I started getting into Superman there.
Well, in the early
In the early
21st
21st
century,
century,
Rowan is
Rowan
fighting
is
a
fighting a
secret
secret
war against
war
the
against the
alien
alien
pirates
pirates
bent on subjugating all
all
of
of
mankind.
mankind.
At least that's what she thinks. In reality, it's 1,000 years later. Earth has long been part of an interstellar and interspecies republic, and she's a character on Angel Black, an e-entertainment that allows viewers to complete a complete sensory experience through her perspective. Who needs actors when you can clone famous performers and splice in some alien DNA? Studio clones have no rights. Their lives and experience can be tailor made for the program. It's just too bad the clones don't know that. Ryan Chandler was a decorated war hero until he was cloned to save his life. His career options died with his original body, and the best job he can get is a technician on Angel Black. He's planning to escape to a newly colonized system when Rowan is scheduled to be killed off. With help from unexpected allies, Ryan stages Rowan's rescue. But getting her off the set is only the beginning. To succeed, they must evade a manhunt supported by the state that fears Rowan's liberation might be the triggering event of a clones' right movement that could cost the establishment billions and shake the foundations of human society. Can two clones find their freedom in a society that treats them as second-class citizens?
Good recital.
Thanks. I figured it orients people.
So, what was the inspiration for Cloning Freedom?
Well, I wanted to do something that explored slavery. Um, and I wanted to also get into a character heavy piece, and I wanted to do something in actual space for a long time because while I'm primarily a science fiction writer, I everything had been Earth based until that point. And so it sort of came together out of that, and I had done another piece earlier on in a book called The Hollow Curse that dealt with the American West just shortly after the Civil War. So I'd had some research into that, and I'd always been a little bit fascinated by the Underground Railroad. And, well, as you know, a lot of the tracks of the Underground Railroad ended in southern Ontario. So uh, then it became a thing of how do you rationalize slavery in a futuristic society? Because already, for most things, slaves are not efficient. Machines do it far better. So I had to create something that humans would be necessary for. And thus I came up with the idea of e-entertainments because a human template is necessary to generate the emotional content and to have the experiences. And there's been a lot of talk about clones. Well, when the book was first conceived, there was a lot of talk about cloning and the thing of, are we going to have it? Are we going to ban it? What we're going to do is human cloning moral. And that sort of inspired me to explore that in the book, to say, clones are people. You can't deny it. They are identical twins born years apart. So I never really saw the whole big fuss about cloning. But, it's like people went crazy when Dolly the sheep was made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think eventually cloning as a medical treatment, if we can ever get the knack of transference of memory, is going to be major step forward for medicine, because a person whose body is destroyed but their mind is intact, well, clone them a new body. Now, that is the part of the technology in the book that is really, really super futuristic. But we have a little bit of just a second here. What can I do with that? Let's take that. Okay, is that good? That?
That sounds better.
That's much better. Okay. Oh, boy. Yeah, so we have done a little preliminary work on that issue, actually, because memory seems to be encoded in RNA strands that are centered in the brain cells. And they have found that if you teach a rat to run a maze, and then you take that rat's brain and you feed it to another rat, the second rat will learn how to run that maze in 1/6 the time it takes an average rat to learn the new skill.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the potential for understanding memory well enough to actually be able to do that kind of mental transfer is not completely far-fetched. The work on it is preliminary, but I always like to go back to, well, you know my work. I always like to go back to something that's real as a foundation and then spin it out from there. And I also wanted to do some stuff with aliens. Aliens are fun. You can look at things from a different perspective. I mean, I've actually developed quite a kind of weird affection for the Batla.
I can see that. They're very interesting, and I can sort of spoil it for the audience that I've seen the second book in the series, which is in development, and it gets a bit more into the Batla culture and such, and I can definitely see how that would, pique your interest.
Yeah. Oh, and in the third book, which is still in here, but there's actually a revisit of some of the Batla mythology that you see in the second book, and the fact that they're a theocracy and they behave like a theocracy, which is, but that's getting way ahead of this. Book 1 before book 3.
I have to say, I really enjoyed the Coelenteratozoids. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I call them Coelentrozoids, and I really don't care.
Okay.
I Jellyfish Zoid just didn't sound right.
Yeah, but they're very interesting culture, and I love the visuals of how you portray them in Cloning Freedom. You've got the lights pulsing on the bells, and they're kind of floating in the orange mist, and it's just a beautiful imagery.
I waxed a little poetic on that one, I have to admit. I thought that they were a really interesting species, and I was enamored by the fact, well, as a writer, things take on a life of their own. And that entire culture took on a life of its own. And the whole thing of, may you languish in the regions of freezing oxygen.
Yes.
And, everybody's got their own concept of hell, and for them, that's it.
There you go.
And Bob was just an interesting character.
Oh, I loved Bob.
Yeah. He's just starting out on his career, and he's so excited to get this
I think
smuggled cargo.
I think that's the equivalent of him jumping up and down and yelling, "Whoopee!"
Whoopee. Yep.
So going back to the ramifications of cloning, we have a comment from the chat from JD Deluzio asking, would a transferred mind be the same person or a new person with the same memories? Would there be a persistence of identity? He says, I'm afraid I'm only 100 pages in due due to the circumstances of this week, so I do not know to what degree this is addressed.
I don't actually come out and address it. The Humans Ascendant group is definitely of the opinion that the clones aren't the same person. But a more objective analysis of it, the question becomes, what makes a person? You have, are we the sum total of our experiences? And also, later on, I mention about the transfer of a undefined energy that they can sense, but they don't really understand. And in my mind, it's a variant on reincarnation. The soul is transferring over. Now, something I don't get into in the first book, but it is part of the background that we all have. People who go much more than between 300 and 350 years worth of memories suffer a form of dementia. And that's based on, again, preliminary work that looked at the RNA chains that encode memory, and the human brain would basically fill up and use all its available space for storage in that time slot. So there's still a time limit on how long a human can live and still be themselves.
Okay.
But since Ryan was only, I think it was something like 85, 90 when they transferred his original consciousness, he's still got a good life ahead of him. But it was interesting preliminary work that they were doing on those RNA chains and how much space is in the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the fellow who did Rimworld?
Yes. Terry Pratchett, I believe?
No, he did Discworld.
Right.
I believe it was Ringworld. My apologies. I wish I
Larry Niven.
looked that up. Larry Niven, that's it.
Thank you, JD.
Very nice man, by the way. Very nice man. Met him once. He kind of addressed that in his work, that after a certain number of years, people could not keep all their memories together. And that concept also inspired some of the work in the second book that I'm sure you're aware of. Everybody else has to wait a year.
Yep. I get the exclusive sneak peek. So in terms of how that whole question of the person, the identity of the cloned body, I think is not particularly an issue in this book, based on my understanding of it, because the cloned characters, you have the E-Entertainment actors who were cloned from, actors who are now deceased.
Yeah, 1,000-year-old DNA.
Yes, and they're essentially brought up with a blank slate, which the
studio.
Yeah, the studio
plugs.
Yeah, the studio fills with its own fake memories. So
yeah,
really, that kind of makes them more authentic people in a way, because they're kind of living their own experiences, their own lives, compared to Ryan. But at the same time, Ryan, his new body had no experiences until
they were input.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's got, I don't answer every question. I have vague feelings about how some of them go. A lot of I think I cover it for the studio clones, when Ryan is explaining that he would have to just take the new body out and have it functional. He'd have to stop the inputs with what the studios had done, which would place Rowan's memories at about 15 years of age. But she has lived, she has made decisions, she has loved, she has cared for people. And as such, those actions have generated in her what we can call a soul. He doesn't use the term soul, but they do know that if you try to just, if you transfer the memories and this energy doesn't transfer, the new clone doesn't become viable. So it was a nice little tie into spirituality without getting overly into spirituality, because that's not what the book is about. The book is a little more mechanical about its view of what humanity is. But me being me, I couldn't just leave the spiritual aspect completely out of it. I had to address it. And
I think something would be missing if you hadn't at least touched on it as much as you did.
yeah, I think so. I think that, well, I'm mind, body, spirit. I believe in that trinity of self. And we can argue till the cows come home what spirit is, whether it is emergent or whether it is pre-existent. But ultimately, it's got to be there, or else the human is little more than a machine. And some of the machines in the book have quite a lot of spirit for themselves.
Yes. Please tell me more about Henry.
Oh, Henry is a wonderful character. Loads of fun. Top of the line military combat infantry mod. Rank of Master Sergeant. And in indentured servitude to the humans who created him. And I don't want to give too much of that away, because I do explain how AIs are not quite slaves, not quite free, at least when they're younger. So we'll leave that. But Henry, he has seen a lot of combat. And then during one of the shore leaves, after he helped pull everybody's fat out of the fire, he was out partying with the rest of the squad, and they went to a cyber brothel. And basically everybody was questioning, well, it's too bad that you can't get in on the fun, because he wasn't equipped in that way. Ryan, who was drunk as a lord, said that he could fix it if he could get the parts. And one of the pleasure robots got damaged, so the parts became available. And he put them into Henry and put in the drive units, so Henry would be fully functional and so forth. The problem is a pleasure bot had a cycle rate of something like 100 cycle units per second. Henry's cycle rate is 10,000 cycles unit per second. Consequently, do the math. Henry, I think I have maybe 5 lines in the whole book that he doesn't have a double entendre or a sexual comment in. And he has a couple of life's ambitions. One of them is he gets blown up prior to the book's beginning, and Ryan patches him in as the operating system for the Starhawk, the ship that they are using to escape. Henry's life ambition, until he gets his body back, is to watch every pornographic entertainment ever made. And as he can multitask, he's well on his way to doing so. His goal, once he gets a body back, is to open a brothel. Because Why watch when you can do? Um, he's a really funny character, but he also has an incredible loyalty to his friends. And you see that in one of the scenes. It's one of the ones that I earmarked. I don't think it was. Um,
It's a few scenes, certainly,
yeah.
some in the narration in the present tense, as well as there are some flashbacks with stuff from Henry and Ryan, as well as some other characters, which also show that he is a fiercely loyal companion.
Oh, yeah. Uh, the other side of him is he often thinks knows better than the people he's supposed to be helping and serving. And there are some interesting side deals that he worked, which helped move the narrative along and kept things interesting. But, and eventually Ryan's going to have to find out about them, and he's going to be really pissed.
Yes, that will be an interesting time. I am looking forward to that in whichever upcoming book it happens in. So, from a writing perspective, where did Henry come from? Where did the idea come from for Henry?
You know, I don't know. He just showed up. I knew I needed an android or an operating system that was sentient. And since the Starhawk is pretty much patched together out of Army surplus, and it was a heavy lander, so it was this hybrid ship between the space navy, as it were, and the actual ground pounders. It combined both functions. So it made sense to have a military bot. Expensive, but necessary because they are so versatile and deadly as an adjunct to the squad. And not that Henry would acknowledge it, but, well, actually, he does acknowledge that this is how humans look at him. Expendable. And another neat aspect of Henry is he does not necessarily like humanity, but he really likes some humans. And he has a very individual thing of, well, have you tried to turn me into a thing that I'm not? There's a big chunk of it. And but honestly, I don't know where he came from. I would think probably a little bit of the robot from Lost in Space, as the seed of the origin, because we get things from our childhood. And I would definitely say the loyalty in Henry probably comes from there.
One thing that I found particularly cool about his character is that this sense of loyalty doesn't even seem to come from something that's programmed into him. It's just a natural result of the personality that he has developed.
Yeah, it is. I believe that Henry is the ultimate tit for tat. That comes a little bit from me, actually. When I think of it, I'm one of these people. You treat me well, I will be in your corner. I will back you up, and I will go through hell for you. You screw me over, I will step out of the way and let you fall off the cliff. So that is a big chunk of what Henry is. He's had a lot of humans treat him badly, but he lucked out in getting onto Ryan's ship, and Ryan basically was, you're a sentient being. That's all that's important. And He treated him well, so Henry returned that. It's the dynamic that he has. That one section where they're saying that they've offered amnesty if they'll turn over Rowan, and he makes the statement of that's 2 votes to 1. You're staying, because Rowan was about to surrender herself, and he sums it up as, no piece of tale is worth this kind of risk. A friend, that's another matter. And that's I think that's Henry in a nutshell.
He's a wonderfully complex character, and just I love.
And he wants his skips back.
He can't fulfill his life's ambitions until he gets them. So looking at the chat here, I've been neglecting. We've got a couple of more comments from J.D. Deluzio. When you said that you mentioned you met Larry Niven once, he was a really nice guy. J.D. said he had breakfast with him once and agreed. And the memory issue about too much memory in your head, leading to a sense of dementia, comes up in Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy as well. And he also asks, is spirit soul a metaphor or a literal thing in the book, or does that remain an open question?
It's mostly an open question as I write it. For me, it is a literal thing. I do make the literal statement that we can measure that kind of energy, but we don't really understand it. Maybe the elder races do. So there's something there. There's something there. They really don't know it. The organized religions don't want to acknowledge it because the soul is ultimately unknowable and cannot be measured. So they don't know any better than we do.
That works. So, it's 6:30. Would you like to do a reading for us?
Sure thing. I've just got the book.